G'day, Carl from Hinterland Caravans again. This is the second stage of our helpful hints for caravanners. We previously did the rollout awning, which I'm confident you would have found interesting and helpful. All being well, you now have no worries putting your awning up, and you remembered all the little tips for locking it in and bracing and alike. We've moved from the side of the van, your rollout awning, to the front of the van, and we're looking at your drawbar area. Now your drawbar technically is this V section, and it runs off of the main chassis. This is your hitch head. Now this needs to be greased up in here every so often. This is the actual component that sits on top of the tow ball on your car's tow bar. A normal hitch head has got a 50mm size ball that fits in it. So the ball of your car travels along, you back yourself underneath that, and of course you lower the van down and the ball disappears in there. When you're doing that, this handle's spring loaded on top. You pull it up, you'll note there's a little lug here. When I pull that handle up, I let that sit on the lug. That little pin sits in the lug. That's opened up the actual inner part of this hitch head, and that allows the ball to go in. When I release it, it comes down over the top and clamps over it. Now that would be locked on. There is a little hole in that little lug there if you want to put a very small padlock through there, or a split pin or something. By having a split pin in there or a little padlock, you're basically assuring that that can't somehow bounce itself off. Your handbrake. Caravans have a manual handbrake, and by manual I mean it's cable operated. If you look in here, you'll see a mechanism. When I pull this handle, you'll see that there's a cable, and as I pull the handle, it's got a tensioning capacity, and it pulls that cable forward. That cable runs down here either side of the chassis and back through to the brakes. So when you pull the handbrake on, it's actually manually pulling a cable which closes the brake shoes, and that's engaged your brakes, so you know your van can't run away. Prior to taking the van off the car, you would put a dolly wheel on. Now, I've always wondered that word dolly. I don't know where that comes from, whether Lucille Ball was involved with Caravaning, or someone who liked the song Hello Dolly, but they call that a dolly wheel. Now as such, what it is it's a threaded bar with a leg on the bottom of it, with a wheel on it, and a handle on top. What happens is as you turn the handle, the threaded bar gets longer or shorter, and subsequently your dolly wheel extends or retracts. And the benefit of that is when you're going to put it on your car, you would wind it like I am now and lift it, so you've got the space to be able to back your car under the hitch head. And remember, back nice and slowly. You don't want to dent your car or damage anything. Once the car is sitting under that hitch head, you can pull up that handle like I said, which will open up the mechanism to allow it to go on, and then lower your dolly wheel by turning it the other way. Now let's assume that that was sitting on a car. You can't travel with your dolly wheel in place. Yes, you could wind it right up, and the weight of the car and the tow bar and the caravan would support the dolly wheel being lifted off the ground. I could wind that until the foot came right back up, but I've still got that wheel hanging down a bit low. I would never travel with my dolly wheel on. I would be turning these handles, and I won't do with them both undone because obviously the weight of the van's on it. I would turn these handles and I would release these two brackets, and I would take my dolly wheel off at that stage. I'd then close those brackets over, tighten them back up. Even though the dolly wheel would be released, and I'd probably take it off, I'd put it in the back of the car. A lot of vans have got storage boxes or a tunnel boot or a front boot. I'd put the dolly wheel in there and out of harm's way, and I'd utilise that again when I pull up. Once I pull back up somewhere and I'm intending taking it off the car, I'll reattach the dolly wheel. Now just an interesting point which a lot of people don't know. Can you see this band around the dolly wheel there? That looks like a metal bracelet. That section there must be set between some of these gaps on these brackets. Now you'll say, well, why isn't that one there? It's because there's more than one ring. I have a ring at the moment on the bottom latch, but because you can set the dolly wheel at different heights, I could have had that ring there in there for argument's sake, right in that gap. That's so that when it's on, the actual dolly wheel can't slide with the weight of the van and slide itself up and down inside of those brackets. Once that clamps over there and the bracket is clamped either side of that pin, it acts like a stay. And so it's very important that either the top or the bottom of those rings is set at least inside one of those mounts on your bracketing here for your dolly wheel, and that won't allow your dolly wheel to then slide inside itself, otherwise it could collapse down over the top of the wheel. Going back from the dolly wheels, we've got gas bottles. Now, most of today's vans, particularly new, have a shower and a toilet and a good sized fridge. And most of those things have the capacity to run on 12 volt, 240 and gas. If you're going to have anything running on gas, you need ample supply. And in these cases, we use 9 kilo gas bottles. Some of the smaller vans or older vans might have a 6 kilo bottle. It's just a bit of a weight saving and a little bit smaller, a bit more convenient putting it on and off. But most people are happy with the bigger bottles because it means they fill up less often. Running 2 large 9 kilo gas bottles, you would literally get months and months and months before you need to change them. And most places, when you want to change them, you don't actually get rid of the bottle. You just unclip that mechanism here on the side, open up this actual support ring, unscrew this feeder, take the bottle off. You can go to a swap and go, you can go to a gas service station that's got a bottle feed, you can go to a camping store and just get them topped back up. Bottles do have a life. On the side of your bottles here, there's a fair bit of information stamped on your bottle here, and one of those is basically, if we were at a service station or anywhere else, they'd have a look before they filled it, and we would do the same. It's got a goodbye date, and I mean that's as long as that bottle's allowed to be used for. These bottles have an expiry date where after that they're technically illegal for anybody to refill. That's because by that stage it's deemed that they need to be checked, pressure tested, check the feed, check the valves, check the hoses. All the new vans, obviously the bottles will already be in place and they'll have a stamp. But if you've got a used van or an older van, maybe it's worth having a look at the dates on there. It also tells you on here the weight of the bottle, and it tells you who made it. Once you've put your bottle back in, it simply slides into that ring, and you click your little lever back over here and tighten it up, and away you go, braced on. This part here is quite interesting. A lot of people have got no real idea what this is. This is your regulator. Now look, you'll note that it's set higher than the gas bottles itself. That's because it has to feed from the bottle top to bottom, and if the regulator is too low, it'll give you an incorrect reading when the bottles need to be checked. These regulators also have a switch that allows you to be able to separate right bottle to left bottle, and then the bottles themselves have an on-off valve on top. You can see that an open or close valve. So when you pull up and you're going to engage your gas, you'd have to open your valve, either one or both, depending on which bottle you're using, or both. Decide on whether you have both bottles open, one closed or the other, and then you're actively able to engage the gas for your fridge or your hot water. Most other drawbars should have a tap on them. Now this isn't always the feed to put water into your van. I have seen vans where there's another little T-piece on this where you could actually put a mains feed. The van we're looking at has got the mains water pressure feed on the other side up by the wheel arch. This is just a simple outside tap. So once the van's running, you can see there's water there. Once the van's, out on the road or you're holidaying, you'll pull up at the caravan park. If you needed to wash your hands or fill a bucket of water or, give something a scrub down, you've got a spot outside the van where it's nice and easy to use and not so messy. The front of the vans these days, most vans have got a checker plate panel on the front. The upside for that is that obviously when you're towing a van, you can get a bit of road grime, bitumen, a few stones and things fly up. It's a pretty important area that this is robust and can take a bit of a bang or a knock, and it's easy to scrub. It's also stone resistant and toughens the front of the van up, whereas if we had our aluminium sheet, it would probably be a bit more likely to dent. It's not going to necessarily make a hole in it, but it's a little bit unsightly, and if you have to scrub it or get bitumen off, obviously this is a painted surface and eventually it would scratch, where you don't get that sort of thing on a checker plate finish. Very, very robust. The other thing we should look at while we're at this is another important point. All vans that are over 2 tonne in Australia have a separate emergency brake backup system called a brake safe. That there is a fused contact point. Now, if I was to pull this out, you'll see here that there's looks like a trigger in there. When this van's travelling down the road, this stays plugged in like so. For the moment I've taken it out, but it's plugged in like this, right? When I pull it out, you'll understand why I'm showing it to you. Now it's quite stiff to get out, but once it's out, the only time these pins ever pull out of there would have to be under a very, very, very bad situation, because this little eyelet connects to the back of your car on your tow bar. It clips in with the chains. Your chains are pinned to the back of the car, as most people would be aware. You've got a set of safety chains, right? And those safety chains the car's under here, the tow ball's on the side of the tow bar there's normally an open bracket, and you put a U-bolt through it and that chain attaches. You normally then hook this in through there as well, so you could imagine it to be stretched out like so. At any time, if this pin was to pull out like I've manually done, it's basically a situation where your car and your caravan must have separated, so you would have been in a very dire situation. At that point, with the caravan going one way and the car going the other, and I must stress I've not had this happen in the 7 years I've been involved in selling caravans. If that pin pulls out, a little contact is made in here, and there's a separate dedicated battery in this van called a brake safe battery. It now automatically puts the brakes on the van on, so this caravan stops dead on the spot. The only time this ever comes into play is when there has been a very serious separation of the car and caravan, and probably in the middle of a large accident, and it's to avoid the caravan continuing and causing more trouble. These are your feeds between your car and your caravan. Now just let me unwrap that a little bit for you. There's two different ones here, and I'll go through the little one first. This is an Anderson plug. Obviously, probably invented by Mr. Anderson. Well, we can assume that. This has to have a matching partner on your tow bar. This is a major feed, a power feed. This is how, when you're traveling, your caravan battery, and most caravans these days have got a battery in them. So when you stop somewhere, you've got independent power. That battery needs to be charged at all times. So when you're towing, this plug plugs into the matching version which you would have had an auto electrician fit on your car, the Anderson plug on the car and the Anderson plug on the van clipped together. Now while you're towing, the power that's being generated by your car's motor, which is basically a built-in generator, travels down this line and feeds back directly into the van's battery. So your battery in your car does not have anything to do with the caravan battery, but your car's motor, when it's turning over and generating the actual drive power in your car, generates extra power through the alternator. It comes back down through this Anderson plug and charges your van battery. So your van, when you pull up, has done nothing. There's been no work done. It's travelled along relaxed, and while it's travelling along, the battery is being charged by this. So the battery is 100% ready to do work if you're going to stay for a few days off track. Separate to that, we have your tow plug. Now this is your actual trailer wire. Once again, you'd have to have a matching section of this on your car because it's got a clip into it. Once upon a time, people had 7-pin, 6-pin, sometimes flat, sometimes round. You'll note that this is a double-headed plug. This is a 12-pin plug. 7 on the top, 5 on the bottom. And if you can pick up when I look at that, they're different size pins. There's bigger pins and smaller pins. As I said, your battery has not done any work while you're travelling. It's being charged through that Anderson plug. So your fridge can run. One of these pins is also an active pin. It's got live feed to it as well. So when you pick your van up, before you get your car wired to suit the van, you need to be aware that one of these pins needs a live feed so that the caravan's fridge is also getting separate power while it's travelling. So these pins, they activate the brakes, they activate the taillights, they activate the blinkers, they activate the feed for the power to the fridge. They also have a charge in there to charge that emergency brake battery I spoke about that's connected here. So technically these days we need more than 7 pins because we need more than 7 feed points with all of the electronics you're running in your van. You'll get an auto electrician to fit this up. It's not much more of a job than what it would have been to fit a 12-pin, a 7-pin I should say, but it's obviously important because the van has dedicated power sources. However your van's wired up, and some vans are wired differently, you need to make sure that you speak to your provider, which is your caravan dealer, and we normally send our people out a wiring diagram. Now here at Hinterland Caravans we've got multiple brands, so yes, a few of them do wire up exactly the same, but there's a couple that do it a little bit differently. Every time we sell a van, we send the owner a dedicated wiring diagram, so if they're going to get their car set up, they get it set up in the same pattern matched to exactly the wiring that we've got for our van. That's important. You should ask that before you get your car done. Make sure you get a copy of that wiring diagram, and you won't be disappointed on the day when you come in, plug your car in your van, and suddenly your lights aren't working or your fridge isn't charging because your wiring is not matched to the van you bought. Double check before you come in. Most modern vans today, apart from having checker plate on the front, they normally have a checker plate insert on the side. Now checker plate comes in either the silver finish or the black finish. There's a black one here beside us. It's a personal thing. Quite often it's slightly dearer to get the black, obviously, because the finish on that has to be done specially for it. That's once again all about protecting the side of your van from stones, road grime and the like. A lot of vans, front or rear these days, but most vans have got some sort of storage area. Now, once upon a time, and we do still have them, vans had an opening door at the front, which was like a front boot, we used to call it. These days, a lot of vans have changed where they pull the frame of the van forward internally and they put the storage from underneath, from the side. That way they don't lose that area at the end of the van. You haven't got a false wall in there. The interior of the van can be built right back to this end, and so to give you storage, they now run it underneath from side to side. Now this runs right across from one end to the other. Some vans that might run 3/4 of the way across, depending on if there's anything on the far side. Some people's hot water system may be mounted there. We come further down the van. Most vans commonly have some outside power. If you're going to come outside, you're going to need a power point. If you want to run lights, or if you want to have a fan outside or something, you've got a 240 feed. That's your 12 volt feed. So a lot of vans once again have an outside picnic table, which is what this is. That just simply opens up and sits out vertically with a little leg on it, 25-30 kilos. Most vans, the TV sets, which are part and parcel of the deal these days, can come out of the van. They have a frame or a base, sits on here, and you can plug it into the 12 volt there and plug it into the aerial there, and you can sit outside here and watch your TV. That's a great way of relaxing outside while someone might be wanting to have a lay down or a sleep inside, read a book. You separate the noise and the entertainment area. Most of your vans today will have multiple outside lights. All the lights in the vans are normally a 12 volt light, so they're very bright, they're an LED. Just turn the internal switch on there now. I've turned the master switch on now, that should be active now. There we go. So you'll see how bright that is. In the old days we had a bulb, but all the new vans run LED. And those LED lights use very little power. They're much brighter and they last longer. They also don't generate heat. So all through your van, you see how bright those lights are in the roof of that van as you look up in there? It's like a jewellery shop. But the one thing you're getting there is efficiency of power use, very little heat, and very clean white light, not that yellow light that a light bulb or an element bulb used to generate. You'll also note all the vans today have got a safety step. Once upon a time people might have made a block out of wood, or they had some sort of frame system. All the vans that we handle and sell here have got a light gauge pull out step of some sort. Nice and easy to get in, reduces that floor to ceiling sort of step height. You'll see it's still adequate to be able to stand there without hitting your head. Not hard to operate, they're all spring loaded, they'll slide back in. I mean, there are a few steel steps. That's just a matter of choice. They're pretty robust. The aluminium ones are a bit lighter, and we like the lightness of them. I'll show you something else that's very common these days, and a lot of people say to me, what is that? Down on the side of most vans, and you can find them at the rear or forward of the awning arm, but historically they're forward. That there is an external gas bayonet. Now, what that's about, that's a feed point. You've got your gas barbecue. Let's assume you've got a Weber or something similar. Rather than carrying a gas bottle with you, the idea is we give you a feed line, you connect it to your barbecue and you connect it to that. Now that is taking gas directly from the main bottles on the van. What that does is save you all the inconvenience of having to carry extra bottles with you. Why would you want to do that when you've got your own gas line? Now I'm just going to close that back up again. It's got a little, I suppose, plug that goes in it. The reason for that is when you're not using the gas or you're travelling, you don't want wasps or bugs or dirt or grime going up there, so it would make that very mucky and hard to put the lead in next time you use it. Most caravans have a rear bumper bar. Hopefully you won't ever use it as a bumper bar, but what we do use it at is the mechanism to carry our spare wheel. Most good manufacturers, the spare wheel is bolted on. It's not welded on. The reason we don't like to weld our spare wheels on, we can undo that bracket and we can subsequently move the wheel to a different position. If we had somebody that wanted to put a bicycle rack on the back, we could put this spare wheel over to one side. If we had someone who wanted to put a second spare wheel, we could move one wheel one way and one the other way. If we have to take the wheel off to do anything, we can take the wheel off by unscrewing it from the bracket itself. And there's just a great big wing nut on this one at the front here, pretty easy. It's just simply a matter of unscrewing that and undoing those nuts, and we take it off like we take a wheel off the car. Or alternatively, we can actually undo the bracket itself, which is screwed to the bumper bar. Now this is what we call an adjustable rear bumper bar. If we were to look down under this van on the far side, you'll see there's some bolts there, and the arm comes down and travels through those bolts. The actual arm goes back about 300 to 400 millimeters behind those brackets. And the idea there is if someone wants to adjust their bumper bar, they can pull their bumper bar out. It's got extra travel in it. The reason you may want some extra travel, if you decide to put a toolbox on the back, it would be very tight here, it'd be up against the body. If we undo those bolts and pull our bumper bar out with that extra travel we have in the support arms, the bumper bar could be sitting another 300 out, 30 centimetres out. We could put a plate on there, we could put a reasonable sized box and not have it jammed against the body of the van. Alternatively, if we were parking the van at home or storing it somewhere, we were putting it in the shed and we needed some extra space because this was protruding in our parking area, we could actually slide the bumper bar off, take the spare wheel off, take the whole lot off and basically shorten the van. And maybe that's the difference between getting it into the shed and shutting the door or being too tight up against the back wall.